I am doing a podcast recording and a live at the same time. I wanted to talk about 3 reasons people feel like business growth is harder than it used to be and why that is. Now, there's lots of factors that could be at play here, right? Like I think about how if you started your business 5 years ago, you've already seen your business through a pandemic. You've already seen it through changes in economy. You've already seen it through technology changes, like so many things, right? So for any business to continue to thrive, you are going to have to adapt, like no matter what, right? Like what got you here won't get you there. But what I've noticed in 2025 specifically, when people say, this has been my hardest year in business, or, the things that I used to do like aren't working, or sometimes they don't realize that it's not working. They'll just say, business just feels harder than it used to. I wanted to talk about that and what to shift. Before I dive in, I wanted to invite you to DM me the word reclamation if anything in this live sounds familiar to you, because this is part of the gaps that we fill, and part of like a lot of the work that we do up front that we're actually going to be doing in the first 6 weeks of the program, so that this isn't just concepts. You have to go figure it out on your own. Like we're actually going to do this together in the mastermind. So everyone who's already in the mastermind, we're going to revisit it. If you're joining new, you're going to do this with us between the 3rd week of October through November. And this live and this podcast episode that I'm recording right now is brought to you by Reclamation Mastermind. Doors closed October 9th at midnight. So schedule your call. So 3 reasons that business growth feels harder than it used to. One is that you realize like you did certain things to start your business, and some of them are normal things that we all have to do because we only have so many resources. A lot of the times you're starting a business and you haven't worked with a lot of clients at all. So you're kind of, the way that you build it is not necessarily the way that you maintain it. A lot of people's earlier clients tend to come from like their network. Also, if you grew your business years ago, the way that social media platforms pushed your content out is not the same as how they're doing them now, right? So now it's a lot more like interest-based content. Before, you kind of could post anything. Like if you look back and if you've been in business for a few years, like your content was just pushed out differently. So you could just be on one platform, post, and like people would discover you, things would work, right? So and it's important to note this because if you're going to be in business for the rest of your life, if this is your thing, there is no way that you aren't going to operate through, live through, pivot through, adapt through changes in technology, in social media landscape, in the economy, in political landscapes, in your life and how you feel. There's always going to be changes. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about. So especially as we're heading into Q4, which I have found historically with myself and my clients, that in Q4, it's a lot of the times, like it's one of the biggest like buying seasons in terms of people really look at like where they are relative to where they thought that they were going to be at the end of the year. They're starting to think about like where they're frustrated. They're starting to look around and like either make their investments or plan their investments, which is why the shifts that I'm going to talk to you about today are so timely, because you really could put yourself in a position where you're swooping in and you are activating people that are already in your current audience. It doesn't mean you have to completely reinvent stuff. Like these are really significant shifts, but not complete overhauls, right? So one of the very first things that used to work and doesn't generally work anymore is selling through likability and through referrals, but not being able to sell to like brand new people, like cold leads. Now, this is where most of us start. You get clients because people like you or they've heard about you. They like you as a person, therefore they trust you, right? And it may not even necessarily be because your offer was super clear. I actually think that a lot of us if you look back, like your offer wasn't really clear and it didn't matter because the people who ended up working with you had some sort of like degrees of connection between they knew someone you worked with or they liked what you were about. And that was enough for them. And I think that's great. Like we don't want to overcomplicate business at the beginning, but eventually selling through likability and referrals will start to look like it takes a really long time for people to say yes. You'll notice that people will say, I really like what you're putting out, or like, I'm meaning to work with you, or you get a lot of like one days or some days. or you feel like there has to be tons of touch points, like somebody has to like meet you, or they have to talk to one of your clients, or they have to, all of these different things, you won't as often hear like, I just found you and I'm ready to work with you, right? So that's kind of how you know you've reached a point where like it takes a really long time to sell through likability, to be honest. And it's just very unclear. And I think that it's great to have that. It's great to have a brand where people are like, I like what you're about. But someone who's a cold lead is going to naturally be more discerning. They're going to be like, it kind of doesn't matter if I like you. Like, I may like you, but like, what are you about? How is this different? Do I need this right now? Is this the right investment for me to be making? And it's funny because I think about how proud I am about like over the years, when people apply for Reclamation, I will hear less and less reasons that are about me. And that's on purpose. Because I'm like, you can think I'm great, but that doesn't necessarily mean someone's going to come pay me $10,000 for a mastermind. Like, they care. Can you help me with my business problem? And how do I know that? So I have had to elevate the way that I sell, because the first couple of rounds, it was people who had been following me for years, who knew me personally or who knew my clients personally. I couldn't continue to sell that way. I couldn't just continue to sell on those things, because if you didn't know who I was, you'd be like, I don't care. Like, can you help me? Yes or no? And here's my problems. And so you have to be able to shift eventually out of selling through like personal relationship, likability, referrals, second degree connections, things like that, to know on purpose how to create demand from cold leads, which means somebody finds you on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, they're applying to work with you, and on Thursday, they're paying the invoice, right? And that can happen even if you have a higher ticket offer. So how you make this shift, okay, is that at this point, you need to shift out of problem solution, which is where we start to keep it simple. We don't want to get too deep. You have to shift out of problem solution. And instead, you need to start to get clear on what's your thought leadership around this problem solution, meaning what is missing for them? Why is it missing for them? What have they been trying? Like all the things, and how you solve for that differently and better because of who you are and because of your skills. How do you solve for that unmet need, that gap? You have to start speaking to a gap, and you need to start thinking about like, what is it that they're actually saying in their words, not your words. So this is the thing, how like at the beginning, unclear messaging, you can still make money. But later, once you've worked with clients, you have so much information about what are they actually saying. If you were to like read their mind, like they're literally telling you some of this stuff on sales calls, on their applications. At this point, like we got to get out of like our hearts and our vibes and our intuition and be like, what are the actual words that they are saying? Because a person who likes you, you could be off, they'll still want to work with you. A person who knows you, has heard about you, you could be off, they're still going to want to work with you. Somebody who legit just found you and is like, what is this person about? They're going to be like, I'm not really thinking that. I'm not really doing that. I'm not really saying that. So part of what you have to do at this point is have a system for anchoring your marketing into your clients' words, not yours. And there's a difference. There's like marketing language, and then there's the language that somebody uses after they've worked with you. This is like a doctorate, collegiate level. And then they're over here and it's freshman year and they're like, what are you talking about? So a lot of this is like looking at your applications, looking at what people say at the beginning of a sales call, what people put in their onboarding forms. What are the actual words? You need to not just rely on your own brain for this and your own thoughts for this. You need to have a database of their actual words. So part of what we do in Reclamation is you take all of your client applications and your onboarding forms. I created a custom GPT for this that you plug in so that this custom GPT becomes a client expert. It becomes a marketing expert. So you could say, here is all of the data. I don't need to keep this in my brain because this is too much. We don't want to rely on our brains. If I were to speak to 5 things my clients are trying right now that aren't working, what would those be? Like, we got to anchor those in. So that's what takes somebody, it shifts you out of selling to people who know you and like you and been following you a long time to being able to convert cold leads. And that's important. Any business owner needs to do that. That's what cuts down buying time from like, they've been following you for a year or two to, you know, being able to convert people faster. And really, it also makes your marketing more helpful. So that's strategy number 1 is a strategy that you eventually outgrow is selling through likability and referrals, and you need to be able to convert a brand new person, and that requires you to sell differently. So the strategy there is thought leadership, not just problem solution, and having your messaging that's anchored in what they are saying, not what you are thinking, meaning what are their symptoms? What is their experience? What are their words? Not your diagnosis. They're not thinking that. They're just thinking in where they are. The second strategy that eventually stops working, and it's why your business growth feels harder than it used to, is that you eventually cannot solve your business problems through content only. And I will see this a lot, and people, they'll go and get coached even, and then they'll just get coached on their content. And that's great. However, that doesn't address the fact that sometimes the problem isn't content. Sometimes your growth has slowed because the algorithm changed and now it's not getting pushed out to the people who need it, or your audience matured, or like you just haven't done lead generation in a long time, right? So we have to look at also like who's actually in your audience now, and are they qualified for your offer? Because it isn't just numbers, right? So we have to be able to take a step back. And if you're posting, and like you're not seeing an uptick, we also have to look at like, when is the last time that you grew your leads? How did you do that? And we don't want to just do that in generic places like Instagram, because to be honest, depending on what you're selling, if you're not selling something low ticket, I wouldn't recommend just using IG or TikTok or whatever to grow your audience. Like, I also think about being in rooms where your ideal people already are. So the way you know you're here is like the same people will register for your stuff. The same people will engage in your stuff. You're getting followers, but they're not buying. You can't name like ways that new people are finding you. If I'm like, how are new people finding you? And you're like, oh, Instagram. I'm like, yeah, we need at least like 2 ways that brand new eyes are finding you at any given point. And at the beginning, you don't have to do that. Or if you started your business years ago, you also probably didn't have to grow your audience on purpose because the way that content was pushed out was different. Now you have to do lead generation on purpose. You need to do audience, not just audience growth, but like lead generation, because not all audience growth is created equal. So what you need to start doing differently now, and I personally have experienced this as somebody who in the early days of business, I didn't have to try. It's like I wasn't trying, but now you actually do have to on purpose say, where are my people at? Where are my people at, and where am I putting my brand in the pathway of brand new eyes, of brand new visibility, and not just anybody, but people who are qualified leads. So that's a different question that maybe you didn't have to ask before, but eventually you do need to do this. So what's missing here is visibility beyond your own platform, especially if you sell high ticket, meaning this is beyond, let's say, posting to YouTube or posting to TikTok or somewhere where there's like better SEO or higher visibility. What you actually need at a certain point is on purpose say what rooms, what brands, what platforms, what vehicles exist that my people are at where I can lend my expertise and I can go fill a gap in those places. The reason that this is so effective and so lucrative is because number one, you aren't just going from scratch and just relying on audience growth on your own platform. The second thing is that whenever anybody sees you or hears you share your expertise on another platform, your current audience, their perception of you is going to go up. And this new audience is going to trust you more because there's borrowed trust from the platform where you are featured, which is why I would advocate not just for being on platforms that are SEO friendly or having a YouTube channel or whatever. And I think those things are great if you have the resources to do it, but not everybody does. If you're a solopreneur and you don't even have a VA, it might be harder for you to be on multiple platforms, but you can do third-party credibility. Visibility on other people's platforms, which is essentially is third-party credibility. And in order to do that, you can't just have like janky pitches and just being like, hey, I want to be on your podcast. Like there's a strategy for that, which I teach in Reclamation, which really has to do with like, what's the thought leadership and the topics that you really want to be known for that you can bring to a platform, and what gap are you filling in their audience? Because essentially nobody's going to want you on if you aren't serving their audience because this isn't about you, right? But also when you have clear thought leadership, you actually get approached. People will say, I heard you talk about this. I saw you say this, and they'll quote you and they will invite you on. So this is also how I'm like, we aren't just always solving our business problems through content. Sometimes it's what we're saying and where we're saying it. Okay. So to recap, solving your business problems through content only is an expired strategy. It's not always going to work. A lot of the times it's what you're saying and where you're saying it. And a big part of that is third-party credibility, growing your audience through aligned platforms and sharing your expertise on those platforms where your people already are. It both activates your current audience in terms of trust and credibility. And it also taps into rooms where your people already are. So you don't have to work so hard to create your own audience from scratch all the time. And you also will grow your audience by doing that, right? Good. I'm so happy. Okay. So the third thing, and also the thing with strategy 1 around cold leads and strategy 2 around lead gen, is they go together. Because if you have messaging that can convert cold leads and you're doing lead generation, guess what's going to happen is that's how a person finds you on a Monday and pays you on a Tuesday. Legit. Like, and that has happened and that can happen, right? So it doesn't always have to be a long route. There are things we can tweak and connect that can help you to spike your demand without like overhauling your business. Third reason that your growth feels harder than it used to is you are delivering results that are bigger than what you're charging for. Okay, I'm going to explain what this means. So at the beginning, like we charge what we feel like we're like, okay, my belief has to be here. I don't want to like spin myself out. I want to feel confident about charging this. But eventually what happens is you get really good at what you do. Your clients get better and better results. You really think about it and you're like, damn, I do this with my clients all the time where I'm like, okay, let's talk about your results. And they're like, and I'll look at them and I'm like, what, wait a minute, look at what people are saying about you. And they're like, yeah, I know, I don't know. But like, they're not owning it. They're not talking about it. And like their identity hasn't caught up with the results that they've created. And so what happens is like, you are so brilliant and you're way up here and your results are way up here and you're not talking about them. And also like your prices, you don't believe you can charge more, even though your results are up here. And granted, you need to have demand to raise your prices, but like what kind of happens here is that people get stuck talking to almost like a level of client they've outgrown. So it's like they have these great clients and then they also have clients that they feel like they have to convince and they have to, they're struggling. And eventually what happens with all of my clients, especially when you're selling high ticket, is like you have to start talking to your best clients, not all of them. So if you imagine them all sitting in this arena, like everybody that you've ever worked with, I think what we do sometimes is we think about like, who has been the hardest to convince, who's had the biggest objections, like who was the hardest sell, and you imagine that person versus the people who either had a higher level problem or like a higher level thinking. And when you start envisioning them, what naturally happens is everybody else either rises to that level or they don't. And so a big part of this is like you have to see yourself as somebody who can serve clients that maybe even give you a little bit of imposter syndrome. Sometimes I'll see this from my clients. It's almost like they're talking to like elementary problems, but in reality, they're in college. And so they're without realizing they're like going with like convincing energy rather than talking to people who are already qualified, don't need to be convinced. It doesn't mean not explaining the offer, but it's just a slight change in almost like the way that you lead with like thought leadership, right? So how you know you're here is you're still getting price objections, even though your result is way up here. You know that you're delivering like life-changing results that are so much bigger. And you feel like you've become like the go-to person for like entry-level people. But then there's clients you've worked with who you're like, damn, if I could have 10 more of them, like I would love my business. So you're actually working with people who half of them you kind of dread and you're just like, this feels so hard. And then there's clients who you've absolutely loved working with and you just don't believe that you can have all of them just like that. So if I were to ask you the question, I've asked my clients this, which clients have you worked with where you would want 10 more of them? You wouldn't be scared to grow. And what's stopping you from talking to them? And a lot of the times it's that like, oh, this feels like it's too advanced. Like, I just don't know that people see me as that person. But in reality, they already have, because they already worked with you. So this is just allowing yourself to evolve, because these clients are not going to have price objections. You also are going to be talking to a slightly more sophisticated problem and a sophisticated person with a higher level of thinking, and they don't need convincing. So sometimes it might feel like you've outgrown your clients, but you're not allowing yourself to grow beyond that. So what's missing, like I said, is starting to talk to your best clients. Imagine them in the front row versus trying to convince people to get in their seats. The people who are trying to get popcorn, the people who are out in the streets. Talk to the people in the front row, right? And you can do that by imagining the past people that you've worked with, where you're like, what made them such a good fit? What about them? And how could you speak to that person versus the basic, elementary, convincing energy? That's also what makes business feel hard. And at first you do that because you feel confident doing it, but eventually you really know your shit and you just have to allow yourself to evolve. So to recap, 3 things that are making your growth feel harder than it used to. Number 1 is that you used to sell through personal relationships, likability, referrals, but you're not converting cold leads, and you need to know in your messaging, like, how to do that. Number 2 is you need to shift from problem solution content to thought leadership content, and solving and knowing that not all of your business problems can be solved with content. Like, we need to get out of, what if it's not a content problem? What if it's what you're saying and where you're saying it? And the third strategy, or the reason that growth feels harder than it used to, is that your results have outgrown what you're charging, but your identity hasn't, and your pricing hasn't, and your messaging hasn't. And these are all shifts that, like I said, they don't require you to totally overhaul it. A lot of this has to do with how you see yourself first, and giving yourself that permission to evolve and be that expert that you already are. Be that expert people have literally already paid you to, and not letting yourself get stuck in like who you were at the beginning of business, what you were doing at the beginning of business, putting yourself out there, believing that you deserve to be seen and heard on platforms outside of yourself, that you deserve and are worth charging more money, right? That people care about how you think, not just what you do. That's a big thing as well, is that at the beginning, it's like, hey, I can help you solve this problem. Hey, I can help you get this outcome. But eventually people they care about how you think. They're interested in how you think. They want to know your lens. They're like, and letting yourself start to talk to that. That's how you market like a thought leader versus just problem solution, where there could be like a dime a dozen. A lot of people solve this problem. No, they don't. Not when you start to allow yourself to sell through thought leadership and say, here's my lens. Here's what I see. Here's what I think is missing. Here's how I solve this differently. Here's my standards. Here's my values. Those things matter, even if you're a service provider. You don't have to be a coach. You can be a service provider. You can be an agency owner. It's almost like shifting out of problem solution and more in selling your way of thinking. And like I said, I have clients who are agency owners. I have clients who are done for you providers, service providers, and that is available to everybody in all forms of business. I actually think for service providers, you see it even less, to be honest, because I think it's so much about like, here's what I'm delivering and here's what I'm helping you with. So those are the shifts again. So what you actually need instead, and what's missing, is the ability to go from selling through likability and trust and referrals and relationships to selling to cold leads through thought leadership and having messaging that's anchored in their words, not yours. The second part is expanding beyond just trying to tweak your content, and instead lead generation through other people's platforms, third-party credibility. That's going to activate your people, and it's also going to bring dream people into your world. And the third is allow yourself to evolve and talk to your best clients, not all of them. That's going to get you out of convincing energy. So what I decided to do to make this easy is that in the next 6 weeks in Reclamation, we're actually going to be doing this together so that you don't join and then you have to go figure it out for yourself. So we have 4 workshops that I'm going to be running from October 23rd through right before the Thanksgiving break. And we're going to talk about high ticket messaging. We're going to talk about how to actually expand beyond your own platform and what are those topics that you want to be known for. We're also going to create your custom GPT brain bank that has all of your client data on there. So you don't have to guess. Like, I'm going to give you some homework. You're going to download language that you have, what clients have said, whether those are applications or onboarding forms or whatever that is. And we're going to create this database for you that you can talk to ChatGPT and say, what did my clients say? What are they actually saying? What are some topics that I can come up with to help them with this? So you get yourself out of your head. So your marketing is like sharp. Like they're going to be like, damn, I'm literally thinking that right now. Right. So we're going to do those things together so you don't have to guess. Right. So if you saw yourself in any of this, it means you're serving clients. It means you've been around, you know what I mean? Like you didn't just start your business like this year. It's okay if you spent a few years and you feel like I'm still figuring it out. That's totally fine. That feels like that for a lot of people. If you're not sure you want to schedule a call, my job is to answer your questions to let you know whether you should, because I'm very clear on who Reclamation is for versus if I could help you in another offer, if we can work together in Telegram coaching, or maybe we don't work together and I just help you and I answer your questions. I'm happy to do all of that. Just know my DMs are open. Message me. Send me what your biggest questions are right now. What are the things that feel like you're hitting a wall? Is there something that I taught today or talked about today that you're like, wait a minute, what does this look like for me? Right? So message me, because application for Reclamation close after tomorrow night. And I want to give you all the information that you need to make a decision about whether it's a fit for you, whether you want to apply. I will always be honest with you. This is not going to be a sales pitch. It's an advisory session. I treat all of my conversations as advisory sessions, as if I am your coach already. I treat every person as if I was already your coach, whether you were working with me or not. Here's what I see, here's what I advise, and here's why. Let me know what your biggest growth issues are. What are the things that you're sitting in right now? Your biggest unanswered questions. I am the person you go to for all of your unanswered questions. All the things that you're like, I got told this, and then I joined this program, and then I'm so confused, and I've been trying this. Why? Because I love to debunk stuff, because I'm a marketer. So I can explain to you literally any question that you are sitting on right now. I can explain to you, why did that make sense for the person who told you? Why did that make sense for the person it worked for? And why it's hard for you and why it's not working for you. I can literally try me. There's no question you can ask me that I cannot answer, because I know my shit, because I literally did this for 16 years before I started a business as a business coach and as a leadership coach, right? So that's why when clients come to me, they feel like it makes sense. They will never buy another program that sells them a tactic. They get out of this consumption loop of somebody has the right strategy, because like they when they renew with me, they are solving new problems. You are going to become a smart ass marketer. Nobody's going to be able to get over on you. Okay. I hope this was helpful for y'all. So thank you so much to everybody who joined. Applications close tonight, Thursday, October 9th. So apply, schedule your call with me. On the call, you are going to walk away with more clarity. If it's a fit, I will tell you. I'll tell you exactly what we're going to work on together. I'll tell you exactly what we're going to do in the first 6 weeks. I'll tell you exactly like what your biggest priorities are. I will answer all your questions. I will tell you confidently whether I recommend the program or not. The decision will always be yours. So I look forward to meeting you. I look forward to supporting you in this next round of Reclamation. We do not open the doors again until March 2026. So I really recommend, when you're thinking about 2026, the decision that you're making in October 2025 is what's going to support your 2026 goals. And because of these workshops, because we're going to be doing this together, you will also feel the difference right away. You're going to be able to hit the ground running, and you'll have all the support from me. This is an intimate, high-touch mastermind. It feels a little bit more like a one-on-one / mastermind hybrid, right? This is how I'm able to support different business models, different ways of marketing, and why my clients have gotten such incredible results. So join me at Reclamation Mastermind. Send your application in before doors close. I would love to meet you, and I will see you in the next episode and hopefully inside Reclamation.